the ballot Meridian election coverage on HOMTV. I'm Julie Dunmeyer. Joining us for this candidate interview is Erik Lindquist, independent candidate for Meridian Township Treasurer. Would you like to introduce yourself to our viewers?
Be happy to. Thank you, Julie. It's great to be here, too. I'm Erik Lindquist. I'm an accounting professor at LCC, and I've been a certified fraud examiner for the last 12 years and an accountant for 34 years. And this year, I decided to throw my hat in the ring to be treasurer of Meridian Township.
Well, thank you. Each candidate for Meridian Township Treasurer will be asked a standard list of 10 questions. Let's get started with question number 1. What qualifications do you bring to the position of Township Treasurer?
Well, I think it's important to have someone who has qualifications and experience in this job. And I've got my Bachelor's of Science from George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. That's in accounting. I have also got my Certified Fraud Examiner's certification, which I got back in 2004. And I've also been an accounting professor, as I mentioned earlier, at Lansing Community College, where I teach both accounting fundamentals and fraud examination and prevention. I've also been on the board of a couple of different nonprofits in town, where with very active boards, where we got involved in the actual ground work of the activities. So we had Carefree Medical Dental. I was the treasurer of that organization. Worked with that in its early days and helped kind of form its formative years and help give it some strength in the financial side. I was also the treasurer of Mid-Michigan Guardianship Services, an organization that has over 500 clients in our community that takes care of people that need guardians and conservators. Pretty important work. And as an accountant and serving as treasurer in that role, I recognized a number of opportunities where we could serve that community efficiently and bring better software in to help people, things like that.
All right, question number 2. What is the essential role of a township treasurer in serving the community, and how would you fit that role?
Well, there's actually a couple of very basic things that the township treasurer is required to do, and that's collecting the taxes and fees, and then also collecting the delinquent taxes that are outstanding. But in addition to that, they're also charged with managing the investments in the surplus funds that might be available to earn additional income for the township. One thing that we have to do in that role, though, is you have to be investing prudently and efficiently and effectively. And I've been doing a pretty good job of that in my career, and I see that as something that I think will be very helpful if I'm able to serve on this role on the township board. Keeping an eye on the ball on the financial landscape is also a critical part of this job, so that as you're in that role, you can be keeping an eye on the future, making sure that the future needs financially of the township are going to be handled smartly and effectively, and with collaboration with our fellow board members.
All right. Question number 3. If elected, how will you ensure the safe investment of township funds?
Very good question. Glad you asked that one, because that's one of my primary concerns as I came into this and I started looking at the books and records of our township. In my prior experience, I've been working with institutional investors, also working under the municipal guidelines that are part of, that are guided by Public Act 20, which I won't get into the details of this Michigan law, but it allows townships and municipalities to invest in things that are of a slightly higher grade than just CDs and money market funds. Historically, our township has been using just CDs and money markets and have gotten pretty small returns because of that. I've discussed this type of issue with other institutional investors, meaning banks, Fifth Third, Huntington, other places like that, that provide these services to municipalities, and they can provide the types of investment strategies and expertise that bring you greater returns. And they're not just a little bit better, they're more like 5 to 10 or 20 times better than just CDs and mutual funds. In the last financial statement that was audited for the township, 2015 financial statement, we had roughly $20 million invested in a notes to the financial statement, and 55% of those funds were invested in money market funds. I think that's a little too high for us to be able to get an effective return. We should be able to get much more bang for our buck on the passive income that's available to us.
Okay, question number 4. Explain ways in which you would balance the needs of the business community and residents.
It's another topic that's dear to my heart. I used to be a small business owner here in retail. Over on Grand River, I had a flooring store. And so I've experienced the role of a small business owner in our town firsthand. And I know what it's like to stay up late at night and worry about meeting payroll and paying off your vendors, and having all these things going on around your head while still trying to make money and employ people, frankly. It's very hard. So when you're dealing with balancing citizens with businesses, in many ways, our small businesses, they're the same thing. Our citizens are the small businesses, and the small businesses are the citizens. I think that we should be doing more, in my experience as a small business owner, we should be doing more than just cutting ribbons and wishing them luck in the future. We should be actively helping them. We have a number of areas in our community that could use a little more attention, and I'd like to see our board, and especially the treasurer's function, take a more active role in that.
Okay, question number 5. Please comment on the current state of downtown Okemos, Haslett Village Square, and Carriage Hills. What proposals would you make, if any, for improvement to those areas?
Well, we've got a master plan that's just been put on the table, which is very interesting, and it's got some great ideas in it. I think it's a really good first step. We've got a lot of mixed-use development that's being suggested for those 3 areas. The 3 areas obviously are very different from each other. The downtown Okemos has had that tuba museum for years and is now standing empty. We have Carriage Hills, which has been kind of a disappointing place to drive by. It's empty, and you got Buddy's there that's still doing well, but it seems like the stores are struggling. And of course, the Haslett marketplace there is very, very empty. One thing I've done, well, I guess to deal with the master plan, I think it's a good first step, but I think we ought to go a little further. As I've already done, I've reached out and I've met with some of the business owners in these locations and some of the residents too. Starting with Okemos, I met with a couple of homeowners that are along the stretch of that DDA development, and they're kind of concerned about what will happen if they put a mixed-use development in their front yard and side yards. We should be obviously working with them closely to make sure that there's some synergy going on and that we aren't going to be stepping on people's toes when it comes to that. The others, I stopped by one of the businesses in the Haslett town center there, and it was really sobering to talk to them, because they've got a huge parking lot in front of their store and they can't put a sign out front because of our sign ordinance restrictions. And there's, they feel like they're alone in a desert there. I think we've got to talk to the landlords, the developers, the store owners, and see if we can't get more interest in what goes on that many acres of blacktop there. In Carriage Hills, that's a part of the township that really could use a food store. That's when that L&L store went away, we had a big hole in that part of the community. So those are things that, and I look at the way, of course, the L&L, when it went out of business, it impacted the Haslett location too. But that was a big impact. And we should be looking at that for what the community needs. We should be talking to the residents that live around there, what would make their lives better. And it may not be a mixed-use development with a fountain and happy, smiling people walking around everywhere. In these drawings, they look so idealistic. It's like we're playing Sim City with our own township. And sometimes the reality has to involve more citizen involvement. And that's one thing I would certainly be pushing for as treasurers, not just to be doing a top-down, this is what you need, but let's see some groundswell of support from the citizens first. What do they want, and what kinds of stores are going to make their lives better?
Okay, question number 6. What major changes do you believe residents would like to see in the near future?
Well, one thing I've been hearing a lot, and I've been going door to door for the last many weeks, is there's a lot of disappointment with the growth in high-density student housing. We seem to be taking up every square foot of available development space with apartment complexes for students, and there may be some other uses that would be useful. I understand the revenue opportunities for these things. It's good for the township to seek, other sources of revenue, obviously. But when we're dealing with putting in more people of high density locations like that, we're going to start stressing other things. The things with the water and sewer hookups, for example. I've been hearing comments from people that live around the Mac and Indian Lakes area that when the apartment complex was built behind them, that the water pressures have dropped. And that's not something I think was anticipated, but it's something they're experiencing now that it's been built. So perhaps we needed a little more futuristic thinking about what was going to happen once we built these units. Other things are of concern, obviously, with brownfield credits and other things that are dealing with allowances to developers. But those are all, it's all part and parcel with how much do we want to grow, how fast we want to grow. We don't want to outstrip our services. We want to make sure our fire and police are also adequately staffed and are able to meet the demands. Right now, our firefighters are working very long days, and it's a lot of work for them. And we are in a position where we need to get probably a little more serious about what that load is and balance that with our development in the community.
Okay, and for our next question, question number 7, explain the role new technologies and innovations can play within the Treasurer's office. Please address any improvements you would like to make in the next 5 years.
People who know me know that I'm a geek. The bow tie comes honestly. And I'm always an early adopter. My watch, I can send text messages on it and make phone calls. My former boss used to joke with me about that I could send an email on my watch, and so then I would just go ahead and do that. But the opportunities for the treasurer, we've done some already. We've gotten some online bill paying installed and started up, and I commend our current treasurer for getting that going. But I think we've also got opportunities that would be making our township more accessible. There are things like the online resources for the park services, online bill paying, treasury services. I'd like to see an expansion of a website which we have now apparently signed on to. It's a new one, I think, in the last month because it wasn't there a couple of months ago. But it allows you to jump on a website and see a snapshot of our township's financials, the amount of investment, the dollar value, has a little pie chart of where the tax dollars are going. It's very informative. I think that's a good thing for people to see. I'd like to take that a step further, though, and have it be it's part of my future envisioning of the township with an IT slant, but to have something that actually shares with the township what the growth is, what kind of growth is happening from quarter to quarter. How are we doing better with our tax base or collections or even interest returns? I've been making a big deal about our interest returns have been pretty anemic. I'm willing to step up to the plate and say, here's what I've been able to do now. Say, if we were getting 0.5% in the last year and we're doing better than that now, I'll put that out there, or I'll put out whatever it is. If it's still 0.5, then we'll have to see that, and I'll make an explanation for it, I hope. But I'm expecting that we'll be able to do much better, and I think we should be aware of what job our elected officials are doing, so we can be accountable for it. And when we go out to the community, those are the things that they would then hopefully want to ask us about. How's the funding doing? Are we in trouble? And we've got this issue with the pension plan that we need to talk about, and the things with the investments and the watching of the activities on the horizon to make sure that we aren't going to be surprised in the few years for something that we should have caught earlier. It's all information driven, and the word transparency is used a lot, especially in government, but it's a valuable resource for citizens, because frankly a lot of our citizens don't really know what's going on here until we're right there in their face, and it leads, I think, sometimes to a role that the township and other elected officials don't really know exactly what the township citizens want, so we decide based on input from consultants or other professionals that we deal with on what a township should be doing. And we kind of get back or behind the ball, I guess, on that instead of ahead of it.
Okay. And for question number 8, please comment on how you feel taxpayers' money has been spent and how you would spend tax dollars wisely.
Well, wisely is in the eye of the beholder, I think. But I have a couple of observations that I've made just as a citizen. I'd say that we've done a less than good, I would probably call it a poor job, on things like the street lights along Okemos Road. When those first went in, I thought, what the heck are we doing with these things? And even last Saturday, I was driving down Okemos Road to 96, and I had to actually focus to try and spot them amongst the telephone poles and the street lights. It seemed like it was not a wise investment to put that much infrastructure that is not seen. If we had buried lines, we had buried street lights, buried poles or electrical and cable, they'd be charming, like they are up around our downtown area in Okemos. But when you get down in that main stretch there, it's kind of silly, I think. And the other thing I've been marginally critical about it. It's nice to have a pedestrian bridge, but I think that the bridge that goes over Okemos Road was probably a little more money than we needed to spend for a bridge. You know, $800,000 or $700,000 for a pedestrian bridge that connects a neighborhood with downtown Okemos. I drive that road frequently, probably 2 or 3 times a day, and I rarely see people on it. It seems like we're putting things ahead of where the demand is. You know, if we have demand for it, we should be addressing that demand. But we have so many things in our infrastructure that need investment dollars and to be applying dollars that we should be, frankly, looking at those ahead of things. And that leads me to what things have been done well. We've been fixing our infrastructure. We've been paying for new roofs for township structures that really need to have new roofs, because if you lose your roof, you lose your building. And parking lots have been repaved. You know, that's an important thing for us to stay on top of. Maintenance of your fixed assets, and I'm speaking purely as an accountant now, really helps preserve your balance sheet. You know, you don't want to have these things, you know, age out and become worthless over you know, a shorter period of time than they can be. You want to let them be used as much as possible. And especially when you're dealing with tax dollars, you want to make them really be effective and productive for a very long time.
Okay, and question number 9. If elected, explain how you would balance the day-to-day needs of the township with the overarching goals of the township board. Additionally, how would you handle conflicts that arise with the dual position of township treasurer as a member of the board?
Well, when you're dealing with a treasurer's job, plus you're sitting on the board, you've got a lot of things that are going on that are not treasury related. But again, in my career, you know, 34 years being an accountant, there's so many things that we do that we don't think have a financial impact, but they really do. And that's where having an accountant's brain can be beneficial when you're sitting on the board. I might be able to spot things as having something we should address, talk about, might have an impact down the road on a tax issue, maybe a millage issue, or it might be something that we would have to focus on regarding the, you know, the employee packages, the pay packages. Obviously, those are sensitive and delicate issues and ones that have long-term implications. That when we're talking about the anything we do that we make a decision, we have to ask ourselves, what is the financial impact of that? And of course, that's when you want to lean on your treasurer to provide some sort of financial expertise, backstop on it, or even just help the discussion along so that we can understand what it will mean if we adopt a certain policy or procedure.
Okay, and our last question, question number 10. What goals would you like to see the township accomplish in the next 5 years?
Well, a couple of things. I've got primarily, and this comes, I mentioned the pension earlier. We've had a pension board in our community, in the township, for some time, and my competitor, my opponent, has been on this board since 2008, but it has not met since 2014, and it has only been handling one of the pension plans, not all of them. So probably the first thing I would want to do is to institute a pension board that is a board which responds to all of the pension plans, which meets with MERS and explores the expectations that MERS has for our employees. We have some, you know, these are the police and fire, some of the most important public servants we have. And if we are going to be hearing from MERS that an 8% or now a 7.75% discount rate is what they want to use to anticipate the growth of this pension fund, and the community, frankly, the world, is not seeing anything greater than 4.25% or maybe even 5% at its most aggressive, we should be standing up and questioning that and sitting down with MERS and addressing that. It's one of the criticisms I've been levying about the last many weeks in at the township board meetings. This is the problem we should have spotted 8 years ago, 10 years ago. 8 years ago, we were $17 million unfunded for the pension plan, and we're using 8% discount rate. That was 2008, the year of the Great Recession that we always hear about. Nobody was making 8% unless they were involved in junk bonds or very high-risk stocks. So we should have asked instantly, what are you investing in that's giving us 8%, that's giving our employees an 8% return? That's where I feel that we've dropped the ball. So a viable, active pension board that is dealing with MERS and their issues and pushing back, frankly, and learning what the real problem is, because I fear that we're not really seeing the final number on this even today. That's probably the most significant policy and committee or board type thing I'd like to see changed. The other things are dealing with the IT services. I'd like to see that more robust, getting, as I described earlier, on the technology side. And I'd like to see the things going on more with the, on that board going beyond just the dollars and the pie charts, so that we can help tell a story of what the Meridian Township is doing. That's really important. As an accounting professor, we're really trying to teach students that accounting isn't just a balance sheet and an income statement, but it's an actual ongoing story of what's going on with the business. And that same thing is happening here in the township finances. Now, governmental funding is different than corporate funding, but I've been involved in both of those worlds, and it still has the same story to be told. How much money have you got coming in? Where are the expenses being spent? Where are we doing our cash flow analysis? Do we have adequate cash flow? And that goes hand in glove with the whole investment piece too. If you have your cash flow analyzed properly, you can invest properly, so you don't get stuck with a shortfall or when you need more cash than you don't have.
Okay. At this time, we've finished our standard list of questions with Erik Lindquist, who's an independent candidate for Meridian Township Treasurer. We have a little bit of time remaining. I have some follow-up questions if you wouldn't mind. Let's start by, talking about what you're passionate about, something that we haven't talked about already that you would like to address.
Sure. One thing I'm really passionate about, and I guess it speaks to what I've been doing in my career. When I want to do something that's outside of my normal job, I get onto a board of directors and I try and kick in and help on something that is of interest to me. I've been in healthcare a lot of my career. I was with Aetna Health Plans and with Blue Cross and Blue Shield as an executive with them, and worked in claims, and I was also a lobbyist for Aetna and worked in Connecticut and California and other places. I understand some of the issues of the underserved medical community pretty well because of my involvement in that, and I see that as a real passion for me to go out and try and give back to those types of things. And both those things, the Carefree Medical Dental and the Barry Saltman's organization, it's down there in South Penn, and the Mid-Michigan Guardianship Services are both dealing with individuals who are less fortunate than we are, frankly. They need help. We don't have the infrastructure in our existing political structures or support structures through our healthcare systems to take care of these people, so we need other resources. Our medical, we have social workers, and of course at Carefree we've got donated services from physicians and dentists, which is really cool. And I think when we can motivate a community to step away from their normal script, if you will, and do things like that, that makes things better. And I love being a part of that. It makes me feel like I've given back, and the only pay I got for it was the smiling face I walk when I go in there, and when I'd see Dr. Saltman, I'd see a patient that was getting dental work done for the first time in their life, or going into the guardianship and I'm seeing someone who is badly disabled and can't take care of themselves, but we've got the social worker who's there helping them. It's heartwarming, really. I feel good about doing that.
Okay. And something that you'd mentioned is safe investments. We're invested in money markets and CDs. Mm-hmm. Where would you like to see those investments go, and how do you think that will improve the township if you were to be treasurer? Well,
best example, and I try not to get too accounting professorish here on you, but what Public Act 20 allows you to do is to get into certain graded investments, AAA plus, and they're typically municipal bonds, municipal investments. They're federally backed securities and some mortgage securities and things like that, that are usually priced at what are called a premium. So they're very high quality, they're safe, and they have a better interest return just in doing that. For example, in my most recent position with CATA, I was their director of finance. We had the experience before I came on board, just a little bit before I came on board, of being frankly very conservative and putting things in CDs and things that weren't returning very much. About 4 months before I started, the finance director that had just left had just instituted a relationship with a local bank and put roughly $30 million into it. And then I took it over when I started that summer. And it went from a return of something like $30,000, I'm speaking off the top of my head right now, for the annual return on that investment, to the 2014 return on that investment. The investment revenue was over $400,000. So it's surprising how much proper focus and proper planning can bring to an investment portfolio. And it's scary stuff to do, and I understand why a lot of people don't jump into it, because we want to be safe. Well, that's why there's Public Act 20. We are required to be safe. And if we don't follow that Public Act 20, then we're in violation of state law. So it's really, it's carefully watched, and we're very kind of, you could call it paranoid about not, stepping outside the bounds of it, but the allowances of it are material. It's probably the best way to say it. Very material.
And we have a few minutes remaining if you'd like to make a brief closing statement.
Sure. I'm Erik Lindquist. I'm running as an independent for this treasurer of Meridian Township. I'm looking forward to being your treasurer. I think it's something that I've been actually contemplating for many years. And I've seriously, like 8 to 10 years, I've been thinking about doing this, and this was just the right opportunity at the right time. Sometimes things come together, and I've been focused on meeting with people in the community in the last many weeks, and it's been very humbling and rewarding to talk to so many people from our township. We have a lot of great folks here who are interested in good things for the township. They want to see good investments. They want to see our police and firemen's pensions protected and taken care of. And they also want to believe that there's someone watching the balls that are up in the air, and that we don't drop any of them, and that we're going to be looking towards the future with security, and that we won't be surprised again by an announcement that something is in deep trouble like we did with our pension in the last couple of years. That's not fun, it's not right, and we should have professionals watching to make sure that doesn't happen. I'm Erik Lindquist, and I'll appreciate your vote on November 8th.
All right, thank you very much for being with us. This has been a candidate interview with Erik Lindquist, independent candidate for Meridian Township Treasurer. I'm Julie Dunmeyer, inviting you to watch Ballot Meridian election coverage right here on HOMTV.